24/7. It does not matter.
Tell them what breaking the black barrier mean, man. What
Come
they
on,
look
man.
like?
What is black, man?
What is black?
Copper Color Productions, man.
Huh?
The Copper Color King Cash Morals and Money, man. Let's get it.
Black King, stand up for understand what black is. It's the essence, it's the culture. We've been on this earth, you heard? The Bronx was called for Apache. Huh? The Bronx was called for Apache, man. Oh, last breed, bro. We bringing it back, last breed.
Really forever flying in this bitch, man. For the ancestors, baby. For all the ancestors up here, baby.
Color King. Copper Color King, man. We back in this bad boy with some more good content, man. Sorry to keep the folks waiting them. Keep the folks them waiting. I didn't mean to do that. We was just trying to get everything right for this live stream, because this is going to be a real informative one, man. I'm prepared to possibly do one of the most informative videos on this channel since I've started. I could be honest. Since I've started, right? Because one thing that has always interested me throughout this entire process was the history of Mexico, right? And the connection to the United States of America. You see, this is why I always say, I don't know what happened, but something happened back in the day. And that body of land that we know as what would be Mexico, New Mexico, Texas, California, Arizona, you know, that area where the canyons are, the desert, the American West, that area. Something happened over there that played a huge role in the altering of the history that we see today. As we've been reading, man, for those who've been tuned in, as we've been reading, as we see, as we've learned, what's over there in the East, right? What's over there in China, Europe, the Middle East, Africa. A lot of that stuff, I would say, with the exception of the Göbekli Tepe, however you pronounce that, is just as old as what we have here in America. From south to north. So it's only right we cover the indigenous rich history of Central America's finest, right? The history of Mexico. How many of y'all knew that Mexico actually, the first president of Mexico was a mixed race, copper colored, Spaniard, Aboriginal man? A lot of people don't know that. You know, they were the first to abolish slavery in 1821. All because of this man's efforts, right? We're going to talk about a lot. How many of you guys knew that there was actually a connection between ancient North America's indigenous cultures and the indigenous cultures over there in Central and South America? I call that the Mesoamerican to the mound builder connection. That's what I call that. How many of you guys knew that majority of the southeastern tribes in the United States today migrated from Mexico? They migrated from Mexico. How many of you guys knew that Kukulkan and Quetzalcoatl, the Aztec and Mayan deities, are the Jesus Christ of their time? People don't know this stuff, and this is why we got to talk about it. So I apologize for the extremely long intro. We're going to jump right into it, man. We're going to start off with some fire, right? I got some fire. It's a TikTok video, right? I'm always finding these things on TikTok. And it's so funny, too, because it's like information is universal now, thanks to the internet. The internet has done 75% of the research for you guys. So if you are still stuck and unaware to your true history, the history of your people, my Aboriginal brothers and sisters, copper colored brothers and sisters, my Moorish mixed race brothers and sisters, right? Because, you know, we all don't come from Africa. This rich history, man. We're going to chop it up. Let's check out this TikTok video, man. Check out the slideshow, though, by the way, y'all. Y'all see these? Oh, we're going to get into this one. I wanted to break these two down, right? These two right here are the last known Aztec survivors, right? I think they were discovered in the 1900s. Maximo and Bartola. Last survival members of, or peoples of the Aztec, of the folks who we know as Aztecs, right? Let's continue through this slideshow real quick. Had to bring the Quetzalcoatl back, man. The feathered serpent, Kukulkan. Had to bring them back. You know, these are the deities. This is from the ancient Mayan painting. It's an ancient Mayan painting, which I see there, right? Y'all see the skin color on them peoples, right? Despite if they not our ancestors, right? Because there was multiple tribes in Mexico at the time. Multiple tribes, I mean, multiple. And you have human sacrifice going on, and you had those who were fighting against rituals like human sacrifice and some of the other bad things that were happening around that time. We're going to talk about it. But what y'all see, man, copper colored folks. These are real pictures, man. Real pictures, right? Mayans of Bonamapac, Chiapas, 600 to 900 AD. Black skinned and smoking the peace pipes before the days of Marlboro. So it's in the history, man. Let's check this out, though. We're going to get into the clip, man. I got this for y'all. Yeah, I know. We don't like to disappoint on this side, man. Check this out. Listen to what they got to say.
Sure, this is not native Commission. It's Quetzal feathers. It looks like here's the priest. He's having himself disguised as a Mayan. So maybe there was a contact. And we know the other one goes back at least 3,300 years. So this is some more evidence we believe that there was contact between the Mayans and the Cometians.
This is a mural of Maya, the high priest of Akhenaten and Tutankhamun, represented in two people as the high priest of Amun and a Mayan. As you can see, Maya was the high priest of Akhenaten and also the high priest of Tutankhamun. As you can see, Maya most certainly functioned under Akhenaten as well. In the Temple of Maya, a Chichen Itza South American language was on the walls in the Temple of Maya. In Mayan texts, it's talking about Maya being a high priest in Egypt. This is Maya and his wife, Moret. These were Americans. These were Mayans. And also, an alabaster egg had the description of Maya and Tutankhamun found in Idaho before they found the tomb of King Tut in Egypt.
Shout out, we know the truth now, man. I ain't even going front. They be reaching when they be going for that Egyptian stuff. I ain't even going front. Check the comments out. It's because the ancient Kemites and the ancient Mayans were connected. I doubt that's anything considerably close to what was going on at the time. He said the high priest Maya. The high priest Maya. Ahukanmai, the high priest of the kingdom province in Maya civilization, was called Ahu Mai or Akinmai. Could this be connected to what the brother was just talking about? What the brother was just talking about? I don't know. This is newfound information for me. But when they be making these Egyptian connections, it be killing me because it's like, wow. But look what it say. Maya or May was a high priest of Amun of ancient Egypt until at least of 4 Akhenaten. May is known for the expedition into year 4 to Wadi Hamat. The purpose of the expedition was to quarry stone for the statue of the king. Maya is not mentioned after year 4. It is possible he died soon after this expedition. An ostracon with the name and title of the high priest of Amun May was found by Fisher during the 1921-1923 expeditions in Dra Abu El Naga. The Nagas. Could this be the source of the connection? We all know that there's a connection between the ancient Nagas and the Mayas. Could this be a connection? Right? The brother said that they found hieroglyphs in Idaho depicting this stuff before temples were built over there in Egypt of Maya. Making the claim that this Maya or May, the high priest of Amun, was from America. Now, one thing I know about tribes, in tribal names is that most tribes get their names from a person or a place. Like the Choctaws, Chickasaws, the Cherokees. These people, they got their names from individuals. So could the Mayans have received their name from this Maya? And could this Maya have been an ancient American? Right? Because we already know they made claims that the hieroglyph stones that they find here in America have text on it that's similar to that was found in Egypt. Right? Hebrew writings, Hebrew inscriptions, stuff like that. They're saying they found that stuff here in America, same things that you would find over there in Egypt. So could the high priest Maya, the high priest of Amun, Maya, be the progenitor of the Mayas, right? Like Jacob and the Jacobites, Israel and the Israelites, right? Could that be a connection? I just wanted to talk about that real quick. You know, we still learning. You know, I got a lot of research to do to even try to tie these two things together right here, you know. But based off what the brother said in the video, he said that, you know, they found a lot of these inscriptions and hieroglyphs here in America. And what they found here in America were on the walls over there in Egypt. So where's the connection? Could it be Pangea? Right, when all of the lands were connected once upon a time. Check this out. Like I said, there's a connection between ancient Mexico and the Southeast United States. And I went over this one in a much older video on my channel, right? And check out what well, first, before we even get into the article, just look at some of these right here, new titles from the Institute. South American camelids, a peace pipe. Camels are aboriginal to the Americas, right? Let's get into the article. So what does it say? The Mexican connection in the far west of the U.S. Southeast. Archaeologists have long been interested in the possibilities of prehistoric cultural interaction between the United States, Southeast, and Mesoamerica. But seldom are the nature and processes of such interactions discussed. The issue is sometimes seen as a fringe topic. There is tantalizing evidence of such interaction, but there also are glaring absences of evidence, right? Saying that they have information or evidence of this, and then there's some things that's also missing. But once we go into the facts and details within this article, a lot of it is going to start to make sense. And as we continue to read, we're going to see how it's important, why it's important, and why we draw these connections, because a lot of this is centered around the same historical standpoint. The origins of the tribes in Mexico can be traced and connected to the origins and tribes of the American Southeast. To examine the issue, we must understand the western boundaries of the Southeast and also discuss eastern Texas and the area considered outside the Southeast and northeastern Mexico, an area similarly beyond the Mesoamerican heartland. Besides material culture traits, specific socioeconomic systems, cultural practices, and the geographic potential for movement and interaction must all be considered. We presented some of these ideas at the 2001 Society for American Archaeology Symposium on Circum-Gulf Archaeology that has now become a book, Gulf Coast Archaeology, with contributions from many researchers. This article extends the discussion, cites new evidence, and examines the topics from the specific viewpoint of the Southeast and its westernmost extent. We suggest that trait-by-trait comparison was the major method of documenting the process, right? So now they're going to start going into the comparisons, right? Now let's read and let's pay attention. Let's pay attention, right? Let's pay attention, because what they about to talk about, what they about to get into, real factual, man. Ancient America, the true old world. These people were trading goods, connecting, migrating in and out, back and forth. Like I said, southeastern tribes have their origins in Mexico, right? So it's only right that once they migrated, they brought a lot of their ways and customs with them and integrated with the mound building civilization. History of the discussion. Connection between the Southeast and Mesoamerica is an old topic in American archaeology, with a venerable, sometimes wildly speculative history from the time of the earliest descriptions of mounds to later evaluations by professionals in archaeology. We do not explore in detail here all of the colorful arguments over the decades that derive southeastern cultures from Mesoamerica or postulate other relationships. Most traditional treatments of the issue simply state that there must have been some connection, given general similarities in mounds, iconography, and maize culture. The icons, like their deities, their gods, like Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, the hand snake, sun, the sun symbols, all of these different things that you find in Central America, you find them also here in North America. Little has been said on the topic in recent years. Dang, this thing's so damn broken up. Though there are increasingly more discussions of Mesoamerican relationships with the U.S. Southwest. Woosley and Ravesloot, but it is generally recognized as a continuing topic of interest in the Southeast. Typical discussions use the label culture contact, suggesting temporarily limited episodes between previously isolated groups, as opposed to regular interaction among groups well aware of each other. For example, the once famous Spindon 1917 hypotheses combined agriculture and pottery making with figurines and pyramidal temple bases as a complex originating in Mexico and radiating northward, right? Saying that the elements of pottery making and building pyramids as temple bases was a theme that originated in Mexico and migrated northward. George Valiant's complex of Mesoamerican ceramic traits became traceable into the Mississippi Valley, and Kroeber and others worked out common cultural, especially agricultural foundations for all the Americas. Philip Phillips appears to have been the first to look comprehensively at Mesoamerican influences, specifically in the Southeast, noting mound plaza combinations with directional orientation and surrounding stockades as one complex of traits seen in common. Other traits of lithic ceramics and shell artifacts and artistic motifs showed similarities, though they never were identical in both regions. Bennett tried to go further, treating the historical and functional problems of such trait lists, noting Mesoamerican influences in the Southeast, but significantly not items of Mexican manufacture. So look, peep this, right? What he's basically saying, what the author is saying, is that they have Mesoamerican influences in the Southeast, but the items that they have there are not of Mexican manufacturing. Basically stating that, as a code, what up, my brother? What it do, chicken stew? We in this bad boy, man. Tune in, tap in. We in this bad boy. And if I butchered that wrong, bro, that's how I've been pronouncing it this whole time. My apologies, but when I see that name pop up, that's what I say. King Azikol. Right? If I'm butchering it, bro, let me know. But what it do, chicken stew? Oh, what happened? Right, so we back in this. Alright, so yeah. What else? Where we at? Oh, yeah. Saying that basically it wasn't built by any of the tribes located in Mexico, right? But the influence was carried on into the Southeast, meaning that whatever influence was in the Southeast came from Mexico. And the idea of cultivating that specific trinket or a style of pottery or a style of agriculture traveled with them into the Southeast. Migration patterns. When people travel, so do cultures. It's like assimilation. It's why we speak English today. When the colonizers came over here, right, they brought their culture with them. That's why a lot of people, they Christians, Muslims, speak English last names, the surnames. They brought their culture over here and we adapted to it, right? They brought their culture from Mexico into the Southeast and introduced it over there. That's why they're saying that they have an influence from Mesoamerican cultures, but they are not items of Mexican manufacture. Proof. It's proof right there, man. Ancient America. Merging of cultures. It's beautiful to see it. He dealt awkwardly with different levels of cultural complexity. In the two regions, saying that the southeastern early woodland cultures needed to be sedentary and more complex to be able to accept Mesoamerican ideas, but also have to have such ideas to become that way in the first place. Both professional and popular literature continued in this vein. For example, Valiant noted that Mixteca Puebla expansion out of the Middle America provided religious elements affecting the Southeast. Right? What type of religious elements? Could this be sun worship or serpent worship? Right? Followers of the Quetzalcoatl, the Kukulkan, the feathered serpent? Or were these folks who were followers of the human sacrifice and the sun worship, sun and moon worship, and followers of the astrology and the alignment of the sun and stars and stuff like that, right? Things that are not of the Most High. Which religious elements would it be? Right? Radin derived mound builders of the eastern United States from Proto-Mayan invaders who set out by the sea from Veracruz and landed in the lower Mississippi Valley. Ooh. What that say? Now it's from south to north. Proto-Mayan invaders. Members of mound building societies, right? A lot of this stuff would make sense, right? Because what we learned so far in the Mound Builders book, right, that there's different groups of peoples populating the Americas at that time. Bruce Lee, what up, my brother? We in this bad boy. What it do, chicken stew? Right, but what we learned from the Mound Builders book, it was multiple tribes and groups of peoples here in the Americas, right? So this could be a possibility. Proto-Mayan invaders, part of the Mound Builders. Their degenerate descendants being the Caddo and the Natchez of Louisiana. So they saying these people that look like these folks. All right, let's go to it. People that look like these folks are the progenitors of the Caddo and the Natchez. Proto-Mayan invaders. That's what they said. Proto-Mayan invaders are members of the Mound Builders, and they are their degenerate descendants being the Caddo and the Natchez. Already we getting into this fire, man. Let's continue. Dealing specifically with the southern cult or southeastern ceremonial complex, a late prehistoric manifestation of particular images and artifact types. Now call it the Mississippian iconographic interaction sphere that offers the best comparative material. Krieger provided probably the most valuable insights. First, a few elements that are generally comparable in the two regions are seldom strictly comparable. Second, the southeastern elements that might indicate contact and borrowing do not consistently fall together in any particular culture complex. And third, no definite trade pieces from Middle American cultures have yet appeared in the eastern United States. No trade pieces, right? They had no reason to trade because they brought their culture with them. Right, let's continue. From the 1940s onward, southeastern cultural development was seen mostly as a process of absorbing slow and diverse Mesoamerican influences, not necessarily northward moving people. Right, and we're going to debunk that because, like I said, the southeastern tribes, a lot of their origin stories take them back to Mexico. So how else would this influence pick up if you don't have people migrating? Right? You cannot influence without migration. Right? Unless you got the internet. Right? If these dudes had YouTube, then we need to know now what's going on. Right? Where we left off. Not necessarily northward moving people. Trait by trait comparison was the major method of documenting the process. A few promising logical arguments were made. Using comparative data, Mason and Eklund examined the details of Huasteca material culture of late prehistoric northeastern Mexico. Right, this is another Mexican Central American tribe, Huasteca. Right, so it's not only the Aztecs, Mayans, and Olmecs and Toltecs that was thugging down there. Something we got to understand. Mad different tribes, and a lot of these, they was going to war with each other down there, having religion wars. Right, people fighting against the oppression. Right, history tells us that the Aztecs participated in human sacrifice. Right, that may be true. They might have been the oppressive tribe in Central America at the time, but whoever was responsible for the introduction of human sacrifice to that body of land created the oppression. There was tribes indulging in both, and this is why people was escaping. They were running away. They were leaving to find new lands, to escape the idolaters. And of course, the invasion of Hernan Cortez, who decimated Tenochtitlan. Right? Teotihuacan. I think that's how you pronounce it, if I'm not mistaken. Let's continue. Yeah. Mason and Eklund. Yeah. Mason and Eklund examined the details of Huasteca material culture of late prehistoric northeastern Mexico and proposed diffusion, mostly in terms of movements of people from that region along the Texas and Louisiana coast into the Caddoan area. Texas became important to examine. Why? Because this is where they migrated through that desert, right? That was a migration for them to trek through that desert and to survive. That was a migration for them. So if you go back and check out my reading of the Choctaw, Chickasaw, and the Natchez history, it stated that when they made it through the desert and finally found their way in in Louisiana, close to the Mississippi River, they were relieved. Right? They said that they found the most beautiful land that they probably seen in a long time. Right? Abundant with game, many plants, herbs, tall trees, and sooner or later the discovery of giants, and etc. and etc. Giants that existed during the mound building epochs. Them in their 3 epochs. One questionable view derived coastal Texas Indians from Caribs coming across the Gulf from the West Indies. Right, this is a probability, a possibility. We saw this in the Choctaw book too. That's funny. Caribs coming from the West Indies across the Gulf, going into Texas. Newell and Krieger saw the George C. Davis site, now Caddoan Mound State Historic Site, in northeast Texas with its early circular platform mounds as a representative of at least a small migration from Middle America during the formative. Based on the work of Michigan ethnobotanist Melvin Gilmore, Krieger suggested a Gilmore corridor overland from northeast Mexico along the Texas coastal plain that could have been a route for movement of maize horticulture from Mexico, right? Transporting maize from Mexico to Texas into the southeast, right? Transporting maize, the cream of the crop, the bread of life. They were transporting the bread of life from Mexico to the southeast. Kelly considered part of this corridor to have been occupied by hunter-gatherers, but such people could have brought things back and forth between regions, including bags or jars of maize and beans, and stories of how to raise or manufacture these products, right? The question remained why these people would not have dropped their wandering ways and begun planting maize themselves. But Kelly thought this might upset the fragile balance of their food collecting pattern. Thus, there were finally some specific statements about the nature of interaction, the routes and mechanisms. Most other treatments remained as statements of trait lists, usually invoking either general diffusion or real movements of peoples. This was especially true for the late prehistoric Mississippian culture, in which the Mississippi Valley and across the southeast, which was variously derived from visits by Mexican traders. Woo! Cooking. They was linking up. The merging of cultures, all right? So when they talking about the history of Central America, just remember, your ancestry goes back that far for those who have connections to the tribes, right? Your ancestry goes back that far. It goes back as far as to the time of the Mayans, the Aztecs, and the Olmecs, and the Toltecs, and all of that. Your ancestry goes back that far. That's deep. That's deep, you know? That's deep. Because just think about how many other things that could potentially connect you to. Right? They say a lot of these tribes migrated across the Bering Strait, which I believe is cap. That's cap. Right? These people migrated across the waters and had areas of land to rest at. Those little islands being surface lands or little plots of land of the former Lemuria and Atlantis. That's just my theory. People could call me, say I'm bugging or whatever they want to say, right? That's just my theory. But I believe that those two bodies of land existed at one point in time. Right, let's continue. Intermittent contact and occasional immigration. That's a part of the same thing. Or, they saying right? This is especially true for late prehistoric Mississippian culture in the Mississippi Valley and across the southeast, which was variously derived from visits by Mexican traders. Intermittent contact and occasional immigration. Occasional immigration, tribes migrating, or outright Mexican invasions. If not, Missouri or Arkansas's natives visiting more southerly destinations and returning with vivid impressions of things they tried to copy at home. But big drop on the Mexican invasions, right? Because who knew the tribes of Mexico was invading American mainlands, right? Who knew? I believe it to be 100% true though, right? Because, like I said, it was religion wars happening on this side of the world, but we don't recognize it as religion wars because their religions are mythologies to us. So to us, they just fighting over sticks and stones and lands and trees or whatnot, right? But these trees have ancestral and sacred and spiritual ties to their cultures. So they're going to fight over it. And that's connected to a religion, right? It's like people fighting over their Jesus or fighting over their Muhammad. The tree was created by the Great Spirit. So the tree is a manifestation of the Great Spirit. So if you take down my tree, I have all rights to kill you, right? Just like if you disrespect their Jesus or their Muhammad. It's the same thing. It's the same exact thing. Oh, somebody left. Punk ass. It's whatever. Mexican invasion, though. That's crazy, right? Mesoamerican specialists similarly discussed diffusion of stylistic elements and various other traits northward, and many acknowledge common continental cultural foundations. The mid-century was a time of intense interest and cultural contact. Situations. A typology of these was established, with two major classifications: site unit intrusion and trait unit intrusion. The former obviously more intense, each broken down into 4 subtypes depending on how much of the original culture was retained or fused with the new. There were problems with such a typology, from the value judgments and implications inherent in the terminology to the lack of quantification or in any way to optionalize the classifications. They just said a bunch of big words to that in that part. Now let's move on to the interesting stuff, right? So what they say, there have been occasional noteworthy attempts to compare cultures by examining not individual traits, but integrated structural complexes or systems. Mueller emphasized looking beyond similarity of form to see, use, arrangement, and context. A good example of this approach is Wick's 1965 study of Mesoamerican influences on southeastern temple mounds. So now we got influences on the mounds, on the mound culture. No wonder why they said the pyramids were located here in the southeast. He compared architectural plans, arrangements, shapes, eastward orientations of mounds and their relationships with plazas, building stages, ramps, or functionally analogous steps and temples on platforms. Also notable along these lines is Griffin's discussion of Mesoamerican southeastern connections through the C page of ideas. He compared items such as pots, bottles, and ceremonial knives, and specifically noted some filed human teeth around Cahokia, right, a mound building settlement whose mutilation looked so Mesoamerican that he thought these individuals must have had their dental work done in Mexico. Big drop. Big drop. What they found in Cahokia? Human teeth fossils, right? Filed down to the so finely that the work looked Mesoamerican, and they assumed that the individual had to have his teeth work done in Mexico. Son flew to Mexico for a teeth BBL. He rode a horse to Mexico for a teeth BBL. That's crazy though. That's what they was doing though. It's like how the shorties fly out to DR for the Wu-Tang, right? He got his teeth done in Mexico. He got his veneers in Mexico. But he was from Cahokia. Ain't that something, right? That's crazy. That's crazy. Ancient history. Mind-blowing every single time. Right? What else? Griffin also criticizes other researchers who use untraceable devices such as boats for postulating migration. But Wiki notes that the prowess of the American Indian as navigator has been grossly underestimated, right? Back to these canoes, man. They show us these small canoes, right? They show us these small Indian canoes, right? But this is the second time we seeing this. First time we seeing this is with the Caribs. Expert seafarers, right? Obviously, because they living around the ocean. And now we seeing it with the American Indians, right? Both, I'm assuming, Central, South, and North. Their skill as navigators has been grossly underestimated. Slapping the face to everybody who claims that these dudes don't have no type of skills, bruh. No type of skills, man. I'm pretty sure they were expert seafarers, man. But let's check out what they about to say about this, right? The most astounding diffusionary approach is James A. Ford's A Comparison of Formative Cultures in the Americas. Diffusion, or the physic unity of man, packed with fold-out charts of comparable traits across North and South America. The movement of influences that produce material similarities in all the air spools, effigy vessels, ceramic decorations, and other material items through some variety of migration diffusion is of course not an explanation at all. To his credit, Ford tried to place the different traits within cultural systems, but he did have them moving around a lot across seas and elsewhere, with little discussion of routes, means, or reasons. Migration diffusion theories of the earlier 20th century went out of favor with scientific archaeology, but now are reappearing with historical and post-processual approaches, even with scientific treatments for some areas. But the subject of prehistoric relationships between the Southeast and Mexico is still somewhat taboo. They can't believe it. Here we summarize current information and discuss natural environments and potentials, and then look at material culture and the westernmost extent of the Southeast culture area around the Gulf of Mexico. It is important to see what connections can be drawn as well as what expected ones appear to be missing. A problem we have noted before is modern national boundaries, which delimit languages, present-day political geography, and archaeological practice. Archaeologists in the southeastern United States and Mexico seldom communicate with each other. Right? Seldom communicate with each other. And what else they got to say? We're going to get into the juicy stuff, right? Texas coast is similarly thought to be beyond the U.S. Southeast, except for the upper portion. The latest census on all of northern Mexico deals predominantly with relationships to the U.S. Southwest, California, and Texas. But both the land and water connections on the east side around the Gulf of Mexico need to be better investigated, right? They're about to make the claim that the folks were also navigating throughout the Gulf of Mexico, right? This very humid and temperate area where a lot of hurricanes and tornadoes form, or hurricanes predominantly. They about to say that the tribes them were trading and migrating throughout the Gulf of Mexico. All right, let's check it out. The Gulf is warm, circumscribed, shallow, and usually friendly to navigate, except during storms and hurricanes. Its geographic setting could be seen to foster human interaction. The marine continental shoreline from the southern tip of Florida to the Yucatan Peninsula is about 5.8 kilometers. But the total tidal shoreline is somewhat 27,360 kilometers long, when all the bays, inlets, and other features are included. Now, I just put a picture up on YouTube too, right? For those who don't know, Florida's coastline was way bigger at one point in time. It stretched out, I would say, about an extra 3,000 kilometers. Extra, right? I would say right here to this point where the mouse is at, to the tip of that P in the Keys, right? The shoreline stretched out that far. This was 13,000 years ago. So that means there was land masses more in like that, provided more land space for boats and whatever the case may be. It wasn't so spread out. You had more land to access. This was 13,000 years ago. Such features provide both sheltered passageways and abundant resources, especially in highly productive estuaries. The loop current carries things around the Gulf in opposite directions, seasonally, sometimes with unpredictable spin-off arcs. Archaeologist Anthony Andrews told us of first-hand experience with this phenomenon. A boat moving off the Yucatan coast can easily get caught in the currents and end up in the Florida Keys or New Orleans, or just be stuck in one endlessly circling gyre of a loop. One kayaker was documented in 1998 paddling 900 kilometers from eastern Yucatan coast across the Gulf to New Orleans in 20 days. My boy took a kayak from Yucatan, right? Check out the map. From Yucatan, right here, Chichen Itza, Uxmal, all the way to New Orleans, where the Shafonta Indians, the Shafonta tribe resides, right? The Shafonta, shout out Chief Warhorse. He took a canoe, basically a kayak, a canoe. So don't say that you couldn't sail a canoe that far, right? Because they did this in 1998. And this was probably a plastic canoe. Mind you, these canoes in the past were made of some sturdy oak, sturdy wood, pause. But a regular kayaker did it in 1998. So who's to say they weren't doing this in 300 BC or 750 AD? Right, where the land, the water was more. What's the term I'm looking for? The seashore wasn't so pushed on land. I don't how to describe it. Y'all know what I'm talking about. There was more land, right? Like the coastline was more stretched out. So who's to say these folks weren't migrating back and forth around then? Hola, boy, roof. I don't want to butcher your name, mama, but hola. We got a pure blood Mexican in the chat, y'all. That's what it looked like. What up though? What up though, family? Let's do it. Where we at? Palm log canoes from Mexico or beyond have washed up on the Louisiana coast. We know even more about the Gulf currents now because of modern events in politics. Experts evaluating proposed new oil drilling have noted how the conveyor belt effect of the current could carry slicks from spills around to the northern Gulf at different times. Right, check this out. 3 weeks after Hurricane Katrina, toxic plumes and debris from New Orleans were being swept by the loop current into two paths. One towards the Florida Panhandle and the other past the Florida Keys towards the Atlantic. Because barrier islands, mangrove lagoons, and other coastal features are such dynamic landscapes, and prehistoric settlement on them was thus probably ephemeral and intermittent, the potential evidence may now be deeply buried or obliterated. Right? And this is just due to natural disaster, just due to the weather. Right? Most of that evidence is going to be deep beneath the ocean surface, right? Just like how they found the Bimini Road. We're going to talk about that one in a later video. Right? The road to Atlantis. They call that the roadway to Atlantis. Bimini Road. They found that off the coast of Bimini Island in the Bahamas. Right? That's what they mean when they say these things is deeply buried or obliterated. You got to dive deep into the ocean. Right? You need some scuba diving equipment to go and find these ancient discoveries. Right? But I'm going to pick up on this one in a later live stream. I wanted to talk about these last two remaining Aztecs, right? Maximo and Bartola. Right? Let's check it out. The Aztec children. And this is a real life picture of them right here. This image you see is a real life photo of the last two remaining Aztecs that were here in America, right? They first appeared in 1848. The hoax perpetrated by their handler in the spirit of shameless promotion not only sustained their long careers, but also the careers of 2 generations to come. Maximo and Bartola were born microcephalic. What does this mean? I wanted to look this one up when I was reading this article. It's a medical condition involving a smaller than normal head. So their heads were smaller than normal, and were originally from the village of Decorah in St. Salvador. The pair were quite intellectually slow and required special care. It looked like they had some type of Down syndrome, right? Something, probably a result of inbreeding. They forcing people to inbreed to create these remaining Aztec children, whoever discovered the family or whatever the case may be. Their mother, Marina Espina, was conned into handing her unique children over to a Spanish trader named Ramon Selva. Boom, you see? Gave her children up, right? Ramon promised to take the pinheaded children to America, where he assured Maria they would be cured of their condition. Instead, Ramon sold Maximo and Bartola to an American promoter named Morris. Morris concocted an incredible story to introduce the children to the American public. Right? So the mom sold the pair to Spanish, let's just call him a colonizer, a trader, colonizer. And that colonizer sold the children to an American promoter. And that American promoter then used these two children basically as displays of circus freaks, right? Basically. But it's so funny though, because when you look at the image of them, right? When you look at them, they still carry that same head shape, right? So could that actually be a true disease that they speaking about? Or could this just be their head shape and they just trying to hide the truth, right? Because they know the truth can impair and surface, right? I mean, it is a possibility that they could have had a disease, right? We wouldn't know. All I know is that these are the two last remaining Aztec children. And they were brought here to America. At the time, America was frothing around a display of ethnological curiosities. Interest in the Mayan civilization was peaking due to recent explorations and publications. Morris sold a 48-page booklet in conjunction with his exhibiting of Maximo and Bartola to capitalize on the recent appetite of the public. Life of the Living Aztec Children told the elaborate true story surrounding the discovery of Maximo and Bartola in an Aztec temple in a lost city. The book alleged that Maximo and Bartola were found squatting on altars and that they were members of a sacred race once worshipped by the city's inhabitants. To further this claim, Morris dressed the pair in Aztec-looking garb. Both wore costumes featuring Aztec suns sewn onto the front, and their hair was allowed to grow bushy. This combined their diminutive stature and proportionately small heads did give them a highly unusual appearance. But would the public believe they were members of a lost race? Right? They used these two though to make an example, right? Right? They did all of this to get paid off of it because they knew, like I said, it's mythology. So people gonna bask in it just like how they are basking to the theory of Atlantis. It's all mythology. It's a cartoon, right? But within that same token, this man was telling the true story, right? They were children of a culture that was once of high, was once in power, right? If we talking about the Aztecs and the Mayans, and when he got here to America, he promoted it as if it was some type of fairy tale. This what I mean though, like whatever's true history, they gonna always claim it to be a mystery. He even took them to England and they were exhibited before the Ethnological Society and summoned to Buckingham Palace. During their public exhibition in London, they attracted 3,000 people in just 2 days. They exploited them. The same thing that they was doing to Aboriginals in the 15 and 1600s, where they were kidnapping them and sending them to Europe to go meet the crown and to go work as slaves and to get a Frenchman's education or to get a noble's education. In this case, he took them back to America and Europe and treated them as if they were jokes. Made fun of their features, dressed them up in the garments, right? The same things that Native Americans do today. Make fun of the culture. Because we all know that they not the true G's, man. They can't be. They come from the caves in Europe. We already debunked that. Right? But they making fun of these dudes. Right? That's how he dressed them up. He dressed them up like this and sent them on their way. Like, yeah, go make me some money. That's crazy, bro. It's crazy. Right, let's move forward. Dirty secrets of the Olmec civilization, right? What is this one about? Well, allegedly, I learned during my research that you had 2 different tribes of Olmecs. You had the true Olmecs, and then you had the ones to re-assimilate the culture and then give them the name Olmec, right? Because Olmecs aren't the indigenous Olmec people that we know as Olmec. That's not their true name. That's not their true name, and that's just one of their many dirty secrets. But let's read. Check this out. Dr. Roman Pina Chan, my fellowship coordinator in Mexico, wrote the first internationally published book on the so-called Olmec civilization. The book, originally entitled The Mother Culture, was written in advance of the 1968 Mexico City Olympics to take advantage of the millions of tourists coming to Mexico that year. Dr. Pina Chan told me that the first limited printing in Spanish, La Cultura Madre, revealed that the gringo version of early Mexican history had so saturated the world that the title had to be modified to include Los Olmecas. For most people to know what the book was about, right? He said the American version of early Mexican history had saturated the world. So he had to change the title. Right? The title was originally the Olmecs, the mother culture. But he had to just change it to the Olmecs because they not the mother culture. From the very beginning of the discovery of this early civilization in 1905 by Mexican archaeologist Leopoldo Batres, Mexican scholars had known that the Olmecs were Nahua-speaking barbarians who invaded southern Mexico around 1150 AD. However, the overwhelming power of the United States culture brainwashed the world into thinking that the Olmecs did it. The faulty version of Mexican history promulgated in the United States became its official history in the rest of the world. Woo! Right? It just goes to show anything that these archaeologists and historians get their hands on, they're going to fabricate it by any means necessary. They're going to fabricate everything, right? One thing that clearly bugged Dr. Pina Chan was that North American and European archaeologists focused on the elite when working in Mexico. They really didn't care about how 95% of the Mayas lived or what happened to them. Thus, to this day, very few archaeologists in the United States are aware that the illiterate Maya commoners were allowed to make only shell-tempered redware because it needed less wood for firing. The arrival of large numbers of Maya commoner refugees in North America would be marked by the southern appearance of shell-tempered redware. And that exactly is what marks the beginning of the Mississippian culture in the Southeast. Mesoamerican to southeastern United States and Cahokia mound building connections, man. What they said. Let's reread that. Check this out. I'm telling y'all, pay attention. Right? Very few archaeologists in the United States, very few, are aware, they are ignorant, that illiterate Maya commoners were allowed to make only shell-tempered redware because it needed less wood. They were allowed to make only shell-tempered redware because they needed less wood. The arrival of large number of Maya commoner refugees in North America, Maya commoner refugees in North America, would be marked by the southern appearance of shell-tempered redware. And this is what marks the beginning of the Mississippian culture in the Southeast. We just gave y'all a drop on that. Thus meaning that whatever these cultures, these Mayans, these Olmecs and whatever, they migrated here to the Americas. So that means those invaders, the barbarians that invaded, are not the true Olmecs, right? Or true Mayans. Let's continue. Let's finish reading. Let's give it a better breakdown. Two of the most poignant moments during my fellowship occurred during that first meeting with Dr. Pina Chan. He, his graduate assistant Alejandra, and I were going through 2 books on the Southeastern Indians, which I had given to him as a propaganda academia. While looking at the pages on the Toa Mounds, he came to the two famous marble statues found under Mound C. He asked me, Ricardo, why did your Indios make marble statues of Maya slaves? Whoa, what? What? At Toa Mounds? Marble statues of Maya slaves? What? What are you talking about? Mayans in America? Mayan slaves in America? On the at the Toa Mounds? What are you talking about? Then, when reading about Moundville, Alabama, Dr. Pena Chan suddenly uttered a mild Spanish profanity, stood up, turned around, and then pulled off the shelf his book on the Toltec people, Los Toltecas. As he thumbed through his landmark text, he pointed out numerous artifacts and artistic symbols which were most identical in the Toltec capital of Tula and this famous mound complex in northwestern Alabama. Hold up, the Toltecs too? In America? In Alabama? What they doing over here? What are they doing over here? Right? We're gonna learn more about the Toltecas, right? We're gonna learn more about these people to put a lot of their history into perspective, even though, like they said, a lot of it is fabricated. It was written in the eyes of the gringo. Dr. Pena Chan also wrote the guidebook to the Museum of National Anthropology, still used today. Spoiler alert, an ancient log tomb identical to one on the cover of the Spanish language version of Pena Chan's book was also found under Mound C at Toa Mounds in Cartersville, GA. The collapsed tomb contained the two marble statues. Mind y'all, they talking about the mound builders, y'all. At Toa Mounds, we talking about mound builders, right? The Zoc or Sokwe people have always claimed to be the founders of the mother culture, but also admitted that several distinct ethnic groups lived in its towns and villages. Yes, that's the same Sokwe as the Sokwe River in northeast Georgia. English speakers wrote the word as Sokwe, Soke, or Soke, but it is correctly pronounced Sojo, Sojoke. Interestingly enough, Sojoke is also what the Norse called the Sisami, the indigenous Asiatic people of northern Scandinavia, who taught the Norse how to build ocean-going sailing ships. We'll talk about them in our next article. Oh shit. Oh shit. Right, even though they talking about Siberians and Native Americans, they saying they taught the Norse how to build these ships. And we knew the Norse, they were seafarers, right? Big drop. Ancient America, the true old world, everything was over here first, despite the color. Despite the color of the brother, everything was here first. Whether it was stolen, traded, practiced, no matter what. According to the Mikosuke, the leaders of the Soki migration legend, many of their people fled to the mountains of Chiapas when the Nahuas invaded their lands. But their own ancestors migrated northward out of Tabasco. The barbarians practiced human sacrifice and ate their victims. Holy cow! And the Sokwe were the last branch of the Creek Confederacy to enter the southeastern United States. That sure does sound like the Olmecs drove them out. So who are the true Olmecs? Right? The Olmecs they not native to Mexico. The Olmecs we know about, they not native to Mexico. The true Nahua speaking peoples, that's the Soke. The Soke, right? And then they're saying that they also over here in northeast Georgia. Right, and when the quote unquote Olmecs invaded their land, these people fled to the mountains of Chiapas. Right, the Nahua speaking peoples. These people fled into the mountains of the Chiapas. These people being the natives, the aboriginals, sorry, not natives, aboriginals of the Yucatan. So what these people would be the true Olmecs. Let's make it make sense, y'all. Let's make it make sense. I'm telling y'all, man. Ancient America, the true old world. They talk about all of these folks migrating over here from Asia, right? Right? A lot of it could be true. It could be true. But the history we know about today is fabricated. So when they talking about these Bering Strait folks, these are all invaders. Every single last one of them, invaders. Keep that in mind. They are invaders. They are not the people who were aboriginal to this land. Right? He said it sure sounds like the Olmecs drove them out, right? This man right here, Matthew William Sterling. Real important, because he's the brother who gave the modern Olmecs the name Olmec. He coined them Olmec, and we ran with it like fools instead of doing our own research. Matthew William Sterling was an American ethnologist, archaeologist, and later administrator at several scientific institutions in the field. From 1928 to 1957, he was director of the Smithsonian's Institute Bureau of Ethnology. For 30 years, this brother directed the Smithsonian. For 30 years, the Bureau of Ethnology, the Bureau of Ethnics, genealogy, history. This man, the director. So for 30 years, he was fabricating this shit. Right? For 30 years, he told his own story and not the truth. Yeah, bro. Crazy. Crazy, right? We don't know what to believe anymore. Right? We don't know what to believe. In 1938, he and his wife Marion went on a vacation in southern Mexico, where they visit Tres Zapotes. Sterling arranged to have himself photographed at many stone carvings and earthen pyramids. When he returned to Washington, D.C., he published a report in which he claimed to have been the first person to theorize that the ruins in western Tabasco were older than Mayan cities. He also coined the words Olmec civilization. This brother, he published a report where he claimed to be the first person to make the theory that the ruins in western Tabasco were older than the Mayan cities, right? We just learned that Maya was the high priest in Egypt. Right? If that's true history that we could really rock with. I don't like making the Egypt to American connection, because the Egypt we know of is Greek. That's all Greek mythology or Greek history, right? When people think of Egypt today, they're not going to think of the true Egypt, right? The true Egypt, the true ancient America, right? We had everything first. They're not going to understand. They're not going to understand. But one thing we could talk about too, though, right? This brother right here, he coined the words Olmec civilization. Readers were not told that Mexican archaeologists excavated the sculptures, causing many to assume that Sterling had made the discoveries. Causing many to assume that Sterling made the discoveries. Woo, that's crazy, bro. That's crazy. That's crazy. Right? We all thought everybody was forced to believe that this was the man who discovered the Olmecs in 1890. Well, he was born 1896. So that means he had to discover them, right? What they said, 1938. And ever since then, people ran with it. This ain't too far back. So that means everything prior to this that was established by the History Channel or the Smithsonian or American history in general, it's all cap. They fabricated everything. They rewrote the entire story. We see this in several accounts. They writing it to perpetuate their narrative. They want to go down in history as important people, right? Thirsty as hell. Somebody give this man some water. He thirsty. Matthew and Marion Sterling returned to Tabasco numerous times after 1938 to excavate Olmec civilization sites that had been overlooked by Mexican archaeologists. Right? They went in and got the crumbs, the leftovers, right? These rats. Unfortunately, they never used radiocarbon dating on these sites. Radiocarbon be laws anyway. And never consulted with Mexican anthropologists. It was Matthew Sterling who also created the myth that the Olmec civilization mysteriously disappeared before the Maya civilization rose. That's just not true. The peoples who created the first evolved into the second, third, and fourth cultural periods. The second and third were more sophisticated than the first, but no longer built massive earthen pyramids and seemed to have less centralized control. So we know the folks who were aboriginal to these lands were not of the dominant and prominent tribes at that time. They couldn't have been Aztecs and Olmecs because those people were invaders. And they saying the peoples who created the first, they evolved into the second, third, and fourth cultural periods. Y'all think that evolution stopped? Hell nah. That evolution is in you. That evolution is in you, shawty. For real though. This is why history is important, man. History is important because if we stick to what they tell us, all we gonna know is these lies. That's it, is that they lie. They lie, they lie, they lie, they lie. That's it. Liars. Storytellers. They don't want us to know the truth. All right, let's check this out because I got more for y'all. I got more smoke. This gonna be another good one. The large city of La Venta was a modest village from around 1200 BC. Then beginning around 800 BC grew into a capital city. The people of southern Mexico began making pottery and building earthen mounds around 900 BC. Their sophistication in agriculture allowed rapid population growth after this time. The period of cultural brilliance ran roughly 700 BC to 500 BC. Most of the occupants had left the city of La Venta by 400 BC, but many other towns were occupied much longer, even to the arrival of the Spanish. However, after about 400 BC, the other towns stopped constructing large earthen pyramids and instead focused on more sophisticated sculptures, like some of the sculptures we see today. This second phase is called the Epi-Olmec culture by Gringo archaeologists and the late formative period by Mexican anthropologists. The formative. So remember what they spoke about when they mentioned the formative and the Mesoamerican to Southeastern connection. This is what the formative is, right? This is the second cultural phase. The towns and villages was very similar to those built in South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, and eastern Tennessee, a few centuries later, of course. This is also when the peoples of southern Mexico began developing a writing system, whereas the later Maya writing systems has now been translated. The earlier one in southern Mexico has not. The Creek writing system used in 1735 appears to be a combination of the Epi-Olmec writing system and one used in southern Sweden during the Bronze Age. Oh crap, look at this. They saying the Creek writing system is a combination of this the one used in Sweden during the early Bronze Age, right? And the Epi-Olmec writing system used in the Epi-Olmec system used in southern Mexico. Now, one thing I want to mention too, like about this Sweden Bronze Age stuff, we learned that in the Mound Builders book that A lot of these invading tribes, right? They have links to the cavemen of Europe. And a lot of these cavemen came from the Stone Age and the Bronze Age. Just saying. Right, we're going to go back into the book. Stay tuned. We got another chapter to cover. That's for another video. But I'm just saying, could this be a merging of the Aboriginal writing system and the invaders? Right? Could it be? I like to call them invaders. Perhaps if I could ever translate all of the Creek writing system, scholars will be able to translate the Ebi-Olmec system. Right? Totanic armies began conquering southern Veracruz, Tabasco, and Chiapas by 200 AD. Totanic princes ruled the entire region, plus several major Maya cities. At this time, the region saw the first construction of stone masonry, buildings with lime plaster. Typical of Teotihuacan. At this time, the region saw the first construction of stone masonry buildings with lime plaster, typical of Teotihuacan. The architecture was not as sophisticated as the architecture of Teotihuacan, but far more sophisticated than previous cultural periods. During the 530s and 540s AD, a series of volcanic eruptions plus a comet strike off the Florida coast caused a drastic population decline in southern Mexico. Construction of major public buildings ceased. Very few stone buildings were constructed after agriculture conditions improved several decades later. Population declines in Tabasco and Campeche coincided with the appearance of Mesoamerican style houses in Georgia. More connections. Particularly in the Necuchi Valley and Upper Savannah River Basin. After 600 AD, Teotihuacano princes ceased to rule the region. It became dominated by the city known to us today as Palenque, which was in the mountains of Chiapas. In 800 AD, the Chinchoco caldera and northwestern Chiapas exploded. Most of western Chiapas, southwestern Tabasco, and southern Veracruz was incinerated, destroyed. Right? Could this be why a lot of these temples and sites, right, look the way they do now? Right? They were destroyed. Right? Could this be due to natural disasters, stuff like volcanoes and comet strikes and stuff like that? Like, who would have knew? We would have never knew, right? Because they just constantly say that these people just mysteriously disappeared. They always mysteriously disappearing, right? This included the capital city of Palenque. The cataclysm ended in the occupation of cities and large towns in the former realm of the Olmec civilization, quote unquote. Many thousands of its residents were killed almost instantly. The primary impact zone was suitable for agriculture for many years. This is the real end of the Olmec civilization in Mexico, but it was to continue in southeastern United States, here in North America, right? These tribes migrated northward. A lot of the tribes assuming now, this is what we learning now, not only just the southeastern tribes, yeah, real, bro. This is real, right? This is real history, right? Much of Chiapas and western Tabasco was unsuitable for agriculture for many years. Many thousands of Itzas either were killed or fled to other regions. This was the breadbasket for the Maya civilization, and so triggered increasing food shortages and resultant warfare in the entire region. The warfare, combined with food shortages, triggered a rapid collapse of Maya cities in present-day Tabasco, Chiapas, Guatemala, and Honduras, but not in Campeche and Yucatan. The large cities in northern Yucatan date from after the collapse of the Mayan civilization. TV and YouTube talking heads don't tell you this. Oh, big drop, right? The large cities in northern Yucatan, they date after the collapse of the Mayan civilization. After, right? Not before, after. right? So just how old is it, right? It's as more recent than we think, right? A lot of the stuff we see on TV and YouTube is more recent than we think. It's not real history, right? The Nahua speaking Olmecs arrived in southern Veracruz, western Tabasco around 1100 AD, perhaps a little earlier. They were probably hunter-gatherers at first, but soon adopted the sophisticated agricultural practices of the Aboriginal peoples of the region. Big drop. Because like I talked about in the Mound Builder series, man, these hunting gathering peoples, right? These are peoples who were most likely connected to human sacrifice, right? Eating people, raw flesh, like eating raw flesh, uncooked foods, just unpure, not living by the truest ways of the Most High. Those who engaged in agricultural practices were more likely connected to those tribes who sacrificed the first fruits, right? The first fruits of the harvest, who had more of a monotheistic belief system. They didn't have all of these different gods, right? Those religions came with the invaders, right? And we're going to go over them. They came with the invaders, and those were even fabricated to the point to where the truth was stripped away. And we're going to talk about it. Right. For the next 400 years, there was very little cultural change in Tabasco. The region became a patchwork quilt of numerous ethnic groups living in tribal societies, just like the mound builders, what they had over there in Mexico. Multiple groups of peoples, right? There was really not much different from the native peoples in Tabasco and the native peoples in the lower southeast, right? Nothing different. Lies your teacher told you about the Americas. Remembering Jim Loewen. He wrote the book Lies My Teacher Told Me, for those who don't know about that book. Right? How did Jim and I, talking about his relationship with the Jim dude. Right? But yeah, man. This is all facts. Look, right? Lies that Wikipedia tell you. The Olmecs flourished during Mesoamerica's formative period, dating roughly from as early as 1500 BCE to about 400 BCE. Pre-Olmec cultures have flourished since about 2500 BCE, but by 1600-1500 BCE, early Olmec culture had emerged, centered on the San Lorenzo Tenochtitlan clan site near the coast in southeast Veracruz. They were the first Mesoamerican civilization and laid many of the foundations for the civilizations that followed. Straight cap, right? That's what they're saying. This is straight cap. Despite what Wikipedia tells you, there was nothing even approaching civilization status in Tabasco until around 700 AD. These people did not build earthen pyramids and make pottery until after 900 AD. The Olmecs were destroyers of civilization. 1100 AD, not its founders. Destroyers of civilization. Right? This should change all of our perceptions on the Olmec societies, right? In truth, if you ask me, man, ever since we learned that an Indian and a Native American, or just an Aboriginal and a Native American, was two different things, and ever since I learned from the books that I've been reading that a lot of the tribes that we see today are not the tribes that were here hundreds of years ago. They own up to that. They own up to being invaders, right? They are invaders. Even the Choctaw and Chickasaw did not go by those tribal names, and neither did the Cherokee. There are multiple branches of Cherokee, right? These names that we see today, they are all colonized names, misnomers, right? Misnomers. Just names that are just given, right? They're given without no understanding of fact, right? Without no understanding of fact. Believe it or not, there are other articles in Wikipedia which correctly tell you that the Olmecs arrived in southern Mexico around 1100 AD, or even tell you that the Zoque were responsible for Mexico's first civilization. right? People don't know about that, right? And these same Zokwe and Sokwe's, you could find them in the southeastern United States, right? Except in agriculture, Mexico lagged behind Western South America and Southeastern North America until around 700 BC. Wow, they lagged behind North America and South America until 700 BC. So whatever was here in North America is older. In the next article, we will look at comparative timelines between North America, blah, 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 blah. So we just learned, man, all what they popularized, right? It's not always the truth. It's not always the truth. The Sokwe, they were the first people, right, to uproot Mexico's first civilization. Then they were more likely the folks who migrated out of Mexico around the time of the conquering Aztecs and the arrival of Hernan Cortez. Right, let's pick up though. Let's continue. So we got a brief history of Mexico, the classic period to the present. Now, I just want to draw some connections, and I want to show y'all how well they fabricate history, right? It's even in their flag, man. It's in the flag, right? The eagle killing the feathered serpent, right? The change of an era. The change of an era. That's what that represents. The eagle killing the feathered serpent, killing the indigenous natives of the land. Right? We're going to go into section 1, the Mayan creation myth, right? Let's check it out. So what we got? It's a couple chapters, and this is going to be real quick, right? Because in addition to this, I also want to talk about Mexico's first black Indian president. We're going to do that in a later video. Right, we're gonna go into this a little bit. The Quetzalcoatl, the Maya maize god, and Jesus Christ. Right. Then I got the history of Mexico, something that we're gonna revisit in a later video. We also gonna talk about the Popol Vuh, which is the Mayan book of the dawn of life. Right. By Dennis Tedlock. For those who want to see, go check it out. I'm gonna have the Patreon set up to where all of these PDFs will be available. So just stay tuned. It'll be here for you guys to check it out. Here we go. Matthew William Sterling again. Like I said, history of the Maya, right? There were many indigenous tribes that lived in what is now present day Mexico. I told y'all, many indigenous tribes. Roughly 20 million people inhabited an area historians refer to as Mesoamerica. One of the most famous of these tribes were the Mayan, who dominated Mexico from 250 AD to 900 AD. Let's go back, right? These peoples did not build earthen pyramids and make pottery until after 900 AD. The Olmecs were destroyers of civilization, right? 1100 AD, not its founders, right? Not its founders, right? So we can only assume, right? When we add the Maya to that. What the brother said about the Maya? What the good brother said about the Maya? Let's go back, right? The good brother said that the Maya, right? He said it was Matthew Sterling who also created the myth that the Olmec civilization mysteriously disappeared before the Mayan civilization rose. That is not true. The people who created the first civilization evolved into a second, third, and fourth cultural periods, right? So these Zokwe or these Sokwe peoples couldn't be the Mayans. They couldn't be the Mayans, right? But then there's a possibility that they could. Check this out, right? The time period of Mayan dominance is known as the Classic Period. The Mayan Empire was connected by trade routes, which each city having its own palaces, pyramids, temples, canals, plazas, and even ball courts. The Mayan creation myth. The Mayans cultivated many crops such as beans and squash. However, the most important crop to the Maya was maize. They grew their crops in raised fields called mipila. According to the Mayan myth, the Popol Vuh, think of it as the Mayan version of the Adam and Eve story. Told y'all we're going to go through that. 3 plumbed water-dwelling serpents attempted 3 times to create human beings, right? Plumbed serpent. The first time the serpents used mud, but the humans can neither move nor speak. The serpents then again tried to use wood, but the humans had no soul or blood. Finally, the serpents decided to use maize, right? The bread of life, right? Just like how Jesus brought the bread of life. The plump serpent, the feathered serpent, Kukulkan, brought maize, resulting in the creation of the Maya people. Clearly, one can see just how strong of an attachment the Mayas had to maize. They also enjoyed recreational activities such as sports. They played the ball game, right? They played Oyama. The game was played on a court that was shaped like the letter I. Along each of the long sides of the court was a wall with a stone ring. The rings varied in size from 50 centimeters to 10 centimeters. 2 teams played at a time. The object of the game was to keep the 7 to 8 inch solid rubber ball away from the other team, and if possible, get the ball through one of the rings. The game sometimes had different rules depending on the location of where it was being played in Mesoamerica. Right, so Mayan civilization, they had a hierarchy, a social hierarchy. At the very top of the Mayan social hierarchy was the upper class, or the nobility, which the Maya called the Kahulub. The king was in charge of everything. The Maya believed their kings were related to the gods. Under the king was the rest of the Kahulub, which included high priests, rich merchants, and noble warriors. This was the group that held power in Mayan society and lived in the cities in the most luxurious chambers of the palace compounds near the major avenues. There was a very small Mayan middle class. This group consisted of artisans who specialized in craft production, petty officials, soldiers, and small merchants. This group lived outside the core of the city in something similar to apartment complexes today. At the very bottom of the social hierarchy was the lower class. This group was composed of laborers and farmers, agriculturalists, not hunters and gatherers, agriculturalists. So these people, right, they are not invaders. When they speak about the Maya, these people are the folks who evolved from the first tribe and then into the second tribe, third tribe, and so forth, right? They farmed, hunted, and fished. The middle and lower classes had to pay tribute to the upper class. These people were responsible for producing the luxury items enjoyed by the nobility, as well as the basic staples of maize, beans, and vegetables that sustained their entire society. The amount of tribute was based on the agricultural surpluses and how many luxury goods were available. The lower classes also served as the Empire Public Works crew and as soldiers in time of war. Mayan society, for the most part, was a fixed society, which means that one could not move up or down a social class. Right? The Maya religion was based around the belief that all things, gods, people, animals, plants, and mountains, and even cities, were alive, and that their movements could be timed to account for all of life's events. This is why the Maya had such great knowledge of astronomy and mathematics, and were able to create such a precise calendar. Right, and just to let you guys know, right, let's talk about it. I got a later video coming out on who created the compass, and it's between the quote-unquote Olmecs or the Chinese. And it's so ironic that they bring those two groups of peoples, because being that the Olmecs are invaders, that would make them of Asiatic stock, of a Chinese quote-unquote stock. That knowledge they brought over here with them from the East, which is why people would say today that the Olmecs created the compass, right? When in reality, it originated in one place, which could be America, and then found its way in China, right? Or in Asia, that area over there, Siberia, right? The Mayan world had 3 levels: heaven, earth, and the underworld, right? Just like the Israelites and the Hebrews, right? Or just like religion today, right? This was made them extremely different from the Aztecs and other paganistic tribes around that time. Heaven, earth, and the otherworld. All 3 were closely related and shared a divine origin. Mayans existed in the earthly dimension, and this dimension was considered sacred. A tree became the symbol of Mayans' world because it stretched in all three directions. The trunk stood on the earth, its roots were into the underworld, and its branches extended to reach heaven. The Mayans practiced rituals to appease many gods such as the creator god, sun god, moon god, and maize god. These rituals often involved in the shedding of human or animal blood, and it was believed that the blood was life, right? And this was not for the true Mayan people, right? This was not for the true Mayan people. This is not how they lived their life, right? This right here is all fabricated. This is just to tell that same story that most Aboriginal peoples, right, were savages and partook in human sacrifice, and they ate people and so forth and so forth. Thus, the Mayans did practice human sacrifice, right? The Mayans, the decline, the reign of the Maya did not last forever. Their empire began to weaken around 900 AD. Historians were not really sure why, but there are several theories. Some said there was too much of a burden on the lower class. Others suggested warfare, famine, drought, plague, and maybe even a massive hurricane that led to their decline, like we just read in the last one. A lot of these societies, right, were devastated by cataclysms or religion wars, famine. You know, these cataclysms or wars result in famines and droughts. People get sick, right? Just like the Dark Ages, right, over there in Europe. It's nothing too different, right? It's all too similar. Right? But that's just to give some brief history on the Mayans, right? Now we know, like the brother said, a lot of this history is fabricated. So I want to show y'all something as we continue, right? Let's check this out. The Aztecs were considered the upstarts of the Mesoamerican world as they were one of the last nomadic groups to arrive in Mexico, right? They migrated into Mexico. Along their long migration from what would either be present-day Oklahoma or Texas, right? They came from Oklahoma or Texas. Who knew that the Aztecs migrated from what would be Oklahoma or Texas, right? Big drop. That's big drop. Right? They came from north, right? Invaders. So could they have been the peoples who crossed over the land bridge as well, right? Right, like the brother said, these tribes are not the tribes that were aboriginal to the land, right? The Aztecs began to believe that they were a messianic people, the chosen people of the gods. They dominated Mexico from the 13th to the 16th centuries. Upon their arrival in Mexico, the Aztecs soon developed a reputation as excellent warriors. However, though they were admired for their bravery, they were also hated for their cruelty, right? And thus local towns began to hire them as mercenaries. So all them folks that's out there, the Aztecs, black people, connection, Egyptians, blase, blase, blah. Cap, bro. Cap, keep that over there. Because it's not true. None of it is true. None of that is true. Right? Our people weren't known for cruelty. Right? They weren't mercenaries. Our ancestors, right, on the Aboriginal side, were not known for cruelty and for being mercenaries, right? Rumor has it, right, it's a legend that a leader from another tribe whose name was Cox, meaning pheasant, right, which we got right here, the simple glyph for the person who named Cox, attested here as a man's name, shows a profile of the head of a bird looking toward the viewer's right. This is probably the Cox stidley, a pheasant and or nocturnal bird. It has a long curving beak, 7 thin feathers, just tiny lines, appears on the tops of the bird's head, right? If you ask me, this is similar to like an eagle representation, right? Check this out. Artwork similar to what you do see in Egypt. Ain't gonna lie, right? Not gonna lie. But when I see the Cox symbol, it just makes me think about that bird that's just murking the feathered serpent, right? And the Mexican flag. The Aztecs did not let Coxcox down, and they crushed his enemies. The Aztecs presented Coxcox with the gift of 8,000 ears sliced from the heads of his enemies. In return, the Aztecs asked Coxcox's daughter Coahuila, who would be made the Aztec queen and treated like a goddess. However, the Aztecs sacrificed Coahuila. Coxcox was outraged and raised an army which scattered the Aztecs. Right? The Aztecs eventually settled in the marshy edges of Lake Texcoco. The Aztecs chose this location because an omen appeared consisting of an eagle perched on a cactus with a serpent in its beak. This image became the Mexican coat of arms and now appears on the Mexican flag. Let's remember though, it's an omen. All these things are representations. What powers use the eagle on their flags? Right? America, that's one. Serbia is two. Austria, Egypt, right? Countries with eagle symbol. What else we got? Right? The eagle is used in heraldry as a charge, as a supporter, and as a crest. Heraldic eagles can be found throughout the world history, like in the Achaemenid Empire or in the present of Republic of Indonesia. The European post-classical symbolism of the heraldic eagle is connected with the Roman Empire on one hand, and with the Saint John the Evangelist on the other. Right? This eagle is a representation of their power, right? In Europe, the iconography of the heraldic eagle, as with other heraldic beasts, is inherited from early medieval tradition. It rests on a dual symbolism. On one hand, it was seen as a symbol of the Roman Empire. The Roman eagle had been introduced by the standardized emblem of the Roman legions under Consul Gaius Marius in 102 BC. On the other hand, the eagle in early medieval iconography represented Saint John the Evangelist, ultimately based on the tradition of the four living creatures in Ezekiel, coming from the Bible, right? But it has ties to the Roman Empire, and before that, to Greece, right? Look, Germany, royal coat of arms in Germany, anything Catholic, right? The eagle had a significant connection to those peoples. So when we go back into it, right, they had an omen of the eagle on a cactus with its serpent in its beak, right? The feathered serpent. What do we know about the feathered serpent? Well, we know in history, Quetzalcoatl, the Maya maize god, was the Jesus Christ at that time, right? What they say. Legends about Quetzalcoatl from Mexico and Central America bring forward tantalizing resemblance to aspects of the life and New World ministry of Jesus Christ. In the past, some leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints occasionally drew attention to certain of those similarities. Among those mentioned in post-Spanish conquest manuscripts were that of Quetzalcoatl was the creator, that he was born of a virgin, that he was a god of the air and earth, and his manifestation as a feathered serpent, that he was white. He was not white, right? He was black, right? He was copper colored and bearded, and that he came from heaven and was associated with the planet Venus, and that he raised the dead, and that he promised to return. The full picture, however, is extremely complex, right? They got the eagle in the mouth of the serpent in the mouth of the eagle, right? Right? Right, when you look at it, like I said, the cactus with the serpent in his beak, right? We go to it. The Mexican flag. What do you see? That eagle, that heraldic eagle with the serpent in its beak. right? But wasn't the Romans who crucified Jesus Christ? Right? Right? I'm not bugging. He was crucified by the Romans. So, if Quetzalcoatl is the feathered serpent, right? A representation of the feathered serpent. What would the eagle with the serpent in his mouth represent? Things that make you think. Right? Things that make you think. But let's continue, right? Let's continue. Because I ain't trying to talk y'all ears off for too much longer, man. We gotta start to bring this back together, right? This image became the Mexican coat of arms and now appears as the Mexican flag. This place became known as Tenochtitlan, right? No one bothered the Aztecs of this piece of land because most did not think it was a good place to live. It turned out to be full of waterfowl, fish, and was located at an intersection where three kingdoms met. Tenochtitlan will grow to include between 150,000 to 200,000 residents, making it one of the largest cities in the world at that time. It was very clean. It was a very clean city with a drainage system, and the garbage was hauled away on barges. A crew of 1,000 men swept and washed the public streets. Residents even bathed more than once a day. Thus, the Aztec people were a healthy group. Eventually, their empire would grow through both warfare and trade to include hundreds of city-states that were interconnected and paid tribute to the Aztecs, right? They had a nobility. The Piplitan. At the top of the Aztec social hierarchy was the emperor and the royal family, as well as high priests, military officials, judges, and tax collectors. The emperor could have many wives. For example, legend has it that the emperor Nezahualcóyotl, and I know I just butchered that, had 2,000 wives. However, each emperor had one principal or legitimate wife. The emperor and royal family served as examples for the other Aztecs. It was important that the nobility maintained dignity. Perhaps most importantly, the royal family led the Aztec warriors. Unlike most monarchies, the Aztec code of conduct allowed for the best successor to the emperor to be chosen as the new leader. The Aztecs did not follow the common tradition that the eldest son takes the throne. Right? At the very bottom of the Aztec society, they had slaves, right? Thus also proving that they can't be a part of the tribes, man, because they didn't involve themselves with slavery. They didn't partake in slavery, right? But they said some slaves did have some basic rights and their bondage was not hereditary. So it's different from chattel slavery, right? This is the type of slavery that you see like in Egypt, right, at the time. Slaves being extremely loyal to their masters, not wanting to be let go from servitude. They feel like they're family with their masters, right? It's crazy. It's almost like these Aztecs were the Romans, right? Almost. Very, very close. Or that they were an offshoot of Egyptians. Very, very close. The religions, all of these things, way too similar, right? It's all too similar, right? Even for the Mayas, not even gonna lie. Now we got to start to ask that question. Well, why was the high priest in Egypt, what was his name, Maya? Right? And did they bring that religion from over there to over here? Or did they take it from America? Ancient America, the true old world. We got the oldest pyramids in Grand Canyon. Bet that. We could bet that. Right? We could bet that. Look, the beliefs in gods, right? Like the Maya, the Aztecs worshipped many gods. These gods included the likes of Tlaloc, Tezcatlipoca, whatever, and Quetzalcoatl, the most common god in Mesoamerica. Quetzalcoatl, the most common. However, the predominant god for the Aztecs was Huitzilopochtli. Hummingbird on the left, was the god of war and sun, and was the Aztec supreme deity. Oh yeah, they gave it to us right there. There you go. Sun worship at its finest. Ain't no way they could be of the tribes, right? Because it was only Quetzalcoatl, and that's it. Right? You had other people in Mexico at the time who believed in a Quetzalcoatl. And only a Quetzalcoatl. They just gave him different names. According to the Aztecs, after his sister had killed their mother, he in turn killed his sister and proceeded to eat his mother's heart. The Aztecs believed that the sun and earth had been destroyed and recreated 4 times, and that they were currently living in the age of the 5th sun. Sun worship at its finest. And they also practice human sacrifice. So it takes us back, right? Right, the origins of the Mexican flag basically represent the eagle, the supreme power, and the serpent, right? That would be the feathered serpent, or let's just say Jesus Christ. The Romans also used an eagle, right, as their symbol. However, they also crucified Jesus Christ. Right, so when you look at the feathered serpent, there's a picture that almost looks like he's walking around with a cross. Let's see if we can find it. Oh, lucky I can't find it. But it's almost like he's walking around with a cross. Right? More or less, right? Look at all of these depictions right here, though. That's crazy. It's crazy, man. That's crazy how people create these artworks and then you could just tie it to history. You could just connect it to history, right? But let's check this out, right? So what it say? Quetzalcoatl and the Maya maize god. To identify our principal characters, let's zoom this in. We begin with the Mexican deity Quetzalcoatl, whose name means feathered serpent. Farther east is the Yucatec Maya. Name for this god is Kukulkan, which has the same interpretation. Told y'all, multiple tribes had the same god, just a different name. Several ancient leaders who worship Quetzalcoatl, Kukulkan, took upon themselves this appellation, much as Muslims today add Muhammad to their names. The most prolific form of ancient Mesoamerican writing observable today is the Mayan language and hieroglyphic inscriptions. A name tied to Kukulkan was discovered on a late classic pot from Uxcatun, Guatemala, that mentions a date corresponding to 25th December 256 BC and applies the name to the current ruler. In fact, it was common Maya practice to associate the current king with another ruler from the past, perhaps even from earlier mythological time. As already mentioned, this custom was prevalent among the Maya in order to strengthen their ruler's legitimacy to reign. Associating the current king with the highly revered ancestor accomplished this goal. The importance of this inscribed pot found in Guatemala is that it contains a shortened version of the name of the earlier Kukulkan. Thus, the name Kukulkan refers to a much earlier king than the Mexican Toplizin Quetzalcoatl, who lived sometime between 700 and 1000 AD. Toplizin Quetzalcoatl, a Toltec ruler, is the most popular of the cultural heroes noted in colonial literature. Apparently, the name Quetzalcoatl or Kukulkan enjoyed a long duration in Mesoamerica, whether it refers to rulers, high priests, or the god himself. Right? Let's move this over. What we got? The maize god is the other deity with which we are concerned in this study. This mythological supernatural figure is called by various names among the Maya, depending on the local, but the most prominent names are Hun Nalye or Hun Hunapu. In terms of general time frame, the maize god is referred to in iconography and other texts before the conquest, as well as in the Popol Vuh after Spanish contact. References in the Popol Vuh likely go back to earlier hieroglyphic sources. Without going into a detailed explanation, we simply note that the maize god is intrinsically involved with later creation mythologies of the central Mexico of the Mixtec people of Okaksa, where Quetzalcoatl stories abound. While the Popol Vuh does not mention Hun Hunappu as being one and the same with the maize god, a codex-style polychrome bowl from the late classic period clarifies his study. In the scene portrayed on the bowl, Hun Nalye, the Mayan maize god, resurrects from a split tortoise shell representing the earth. His sons, the hero twins, are depicted as at his left and right and are identified as Hun Hunappu's sons. Hun Hunappu, written as Hunahu, and Shablanke, written as Yax Balam. To understand Hun Hunappu identification as the main god as the maize god in Guatemala, we need to retell some of the stories surrounding him. In the Popol Vuh, Hunappu and Jacques Blanc defeat the evil lords of the underworld who have killed their father. Hun Hunappu, after avenging their father's death, the twins are responsible for his subsequent rebirth. Hun Hunappu is then resurrected from the earth, which is often portrayed as a turtle carapace, right? A turtle carapace, right? And let's check this out, because I know I've seen this somewhere before. Let's see if they got the image that they speak of, right? I've seen this before. The god coming out of a shell. But we're not going to keep sidetracking, right? Let's continue. But yeah, they said he was resurrected for the earth, which is often portrayed as a turtle carapace, right? And what do they call it, right? Turtle Island, right? Turtle Island, right? He was resurrected from the earth, Mother Earth, which is portrayed as a turtle. Therefore, this vessel, which visually demonstrates the same story told in the Popol Vuh hundreds of years later, clearly establishes Hun Nalye and Hun Hunappu as the same person, is the same people, like Jesus Christ and God, right? It's the same people. In the Popol Vuh, we see readily the twins' association with maize. Hunappu and Jablanque instruct their grandmother that if the corn planted in her house dies, they die. But if it lives, they will remain, right? Corn, maize, the bread of life. According to the story, after they defeat the lords of death in the underworld, the hero twins are reborn. That is, the maize remained alive in their grandmother's house. We conclude that both the father Hun Hunappu and his sons, particularly his namesake Hunappu, are related to maize and may be designated as maize gods. Importantly, David H. Kelly presents additional evidence from the Popol Vuh that Hun Hunappu and the maize god are one and the same. Woo! Big facts, right? That's some fire right there, right? Because it's letting us know that those who, the creator of the maize, right? The maize god, and Hun Hunappu, who is basically another name for the Most High, is the same person, right? Just like Jesus Christ and God being the same person. One entity, not multiple different gods, right? Not multiple different gods. This is just breaking down their mythology. This is breaking down their mythology so that people can understand the differences between the paganism. And you know what? I'm mad late to this response, but it's a possibility that the Maya civilized the world. But they said earlier, right, that the first civilizations over there in Central America weren't even the Maya or the Olmec. They were called Zoque or Zoque. And those people transgressed into one generation, which developed into another generation, and then developed into another, right? The changing of times, right? That's the changing of time. That's what that represents. But where we at? Hunappu and the maize god are one and the same. The importance of including the maize god with different appellations in this study is significant, right? We will see that the maize god functions as a sacrificial god who dies and resurrects, and who also plays an important role in the creation, and therefore is reminiscent of the roles as Christ as Savior and Creator. Right? So this is just a deeper dive into the whole feathered serpent ideology, right? The maize god, Quetzalcoatl, and Jesus Christ, right? And check this out, right? These hieroglyphs. Figure 4, a creation text from the tablet of the cross, Palenque. Redrawn, right? The Mexican god, Ethical Quetzalcoatl, lifts the sky at creation. Right? I turned after it appeared. First 3 stone place, Hun Now Ye, 2 days, 9 months, image of lying down sky. He entered into the sky. Oh wow. Right? These are hieroglyphs, y'all. Right? These are hieroglyphs. This one is from Palenque. Right? Well, both are from Palenque. Sorry. The available Mesoamerican sources dealing with the creation follow in chronological order. Pre-Columbian Mayan hieroglyph texts found in Palenque, Chiapas, and Mexico, and Quirigua, Guatemala, disclose a role for the maize god in creation. Polychrome vessels and plates also testify to the maize god's participation at this pristine time. In addition, pictorial codices drawn before the conquest deal with Quetzalcoatl's role in the creation. Concerning other documents, most scholars agree that the Quiche Maya Popol Vuh is the least corrupted text written after the conquest. It also repeats stories of the maize god that coincide with Quetzalcoatl creation myths from Mexico. The Maya accounts corroborate the acts of creation in somewhat different manner because they were recorded by another culture, but they still present a pan-Mesoamerican mythological paradigm, right? What did they just say, right? The Mayan accounts corroborate the acts of creation in somewhat different manner, right? It's told from a different perception because they were recorded by another culture, the invading cultures. They retold the story. Finally, we possess legends in 16th century manuscripts declaring Quetzalcoatl as the creator, the Most High, right? These declarations are discussed in a later section of this paper pertaining to plausible pre-Hispanic beliefs recorded after the conquest. On the whole, scholars view stories concerned with the god Quetzalcoatl and his involvement in the creation as exhibiting the least amount of Christian influence. Referring to the colonial period manuscripts, Michael Grolich found that careful reconstruction and analysis of the myths dealing with the first phase of the creation of the world all show variations on a single theme. Comparative analysis also suggests that the often suspected Christian influence is minor and points to the unity of Mesoamerican thought on Quetzalcoatl as the creator. Right? The Christian influence is minor. Right? Minor, right? This don't come from no colonization. These theories come from research, right? And from archaeological evidence, right? At Palenque, inscriptions inform us that Hun Now Ye, the maize god, raised the sky in one phase of creation from the primordial sea, right? And what land was first out of them flood waters? America, right? We came up out the flood first. That's why the animals, they were here first. Everything that Noah saw, right, when that ark made landfall was here in America. The primordial sea, we were the first out of the primordial sea, man. This happened when he positioned the world tree, or tree of life, at the center axis of the cosmos. Speaking to this theme, Kent Riley explained that Mayanists now believe the creation involved bloodletting by First Father, another name for Hun Nao Ye, which blood fertilized sacred space, causing maize to spring forth. Right? Maize. The breath of life, the blood of life. Right? The sprouted maize served as an axis mundi, or a world tree, lifting the sky off the earth and allowing light to enter creation. One further connection exists between the maize god and the creation. The god Exatao Quetzalcoatl was born on the day 9 Ik, 9 Win, and the Maya maize god is associated with this day in 3409 BC, a point in mythological history, right? Telling y'all, everything that's mythology, right? Whatever they call it mythology, is true history. That's true history, right? It actually existed, right? Or at some point in time, these things was actually going on. These belief systems, these religious structures, right? Some scholars associate these two deities as near equivalents, not only because they were associated with the same day, but because they participated in similar creation events, right? Nun, what's the brother name? Hun No Ye, right? Hun No Ya, right? And Quetzalcoatl is the same person, right? The creation gods, the maize gods, right? So when we go back to the history of Mexico, right, and we see they had beliefs in like Quetzalcoatl, right, and multiple different gods, right? That wasn't the true belief system. Look, they said it. They had a true belief in Huitzilopochtli, probably was the devil, right? The god of war, that was Kratos, and the sun, and was the Aztec supreme deity. It was not Quetzalcoatl, the creation god. That's the creation god. So yeah, these Aztecs invaders, right? So we can't connect ourselves to that. Folks can't be out there saying, oh yeah, the Aztec, that's our true history, the Indians, blah 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 blah. You got to actually know what the hell you talking about. You got to know what you're talking about, because like they said, right, a lot of this stuff, right, is fabricated. They fabricated the history so that it could look good for them, right? It could look good for them, or that they could keep the true history of the world hidden, right? They already told us it was cap, and we're gonna go back to that part just so that we could walk right through it again, kick down the door again, right? Kick down the door again. But let's continue. Right, we know Quetzalcoatl and the Maya maize god, same person, right? In pre-Columbian Mixtec Vienna Codex, Execatl Quetzalcoatl is shown raising up the sky. A variation of this theme appears in post-conquest texts, right? Sorry, bullcrap, right? We over here tweaking, y'all. Wherein Quetzalcoatl is described as metamorphosing into an enormous tree. Then he and another deity push up the sky with their tree forms. An identifying feature of Ecatl Quetzalcoatl is a projecting red avian snout. Through this beak-like device, he blew wind, air, and the breath of life, which was his primarily role. This strange-looking anthropomorphic deity, let me zoom this in for more for y'all, can be traced from the time of conquest back to the pre-classic era. A terracotta pot sculpted with the face of Ecatl was found in Izapa, Chiapas, and Mexico. That's how old it is, right? Pre-classic. Way before pre-Columbian, right? And it dates to the 1st or 2nd century BC. That's 1 BC or 2 BC. However, we do not know whether this particular image bears the same creative connotation that Ecatl Quetzalcoatl possessed 1700 years later, because wind precedes rain, Quetzalcoatl is associated with life-giving rains. In other words, the title of Quetzalcoatl designated him as God of life, even the creator. Right? Check this out. The bread of life. Both Quetzalcoatl and the Maya maize god are responsible for bringing maize to humankind. Maize being the most important staple in Mesoamerica, according to legend, Quetzalcoatl transformed himself into an ant in order to retrieve seeds from the mountain of sustenance, where maize is kept. You know what's so funny, right? The Most High is the only person that has the power to transform himself into different things, right? Like what we know from the Moses story, right? God transformed himself into a burning bush. He appeared to Moses as a burning bush, right? Quetzalcoatl transformed himself into an ant in order to retrieve seeds from the mountain of sustenance, where maize is kept. Ceramics portray the resurrected maize god bringing maize to the surface of the earth from the mountain of sustenance. These kernels served as food and were believed to be the substance from which humans were created, right? The maize kernels served as food and were believed to be the substance from which humans are created, right? And then it's a story of how Quetzalcoatl saved humankind. This deity descended into the underworld to shed his blood onto the bones of the deceased so that they would leave again. The entire legend, with all its strange details, sounds pagan to the Christian world, but Latter-day Saints hear echoes of the saving works of Jesus Christ among departed spirits. To summarize, Quetzalcoatl goes to the underworld to retrieve human bones after a great flood destroyed his world and its people who were subsequently transformed into fish, but were considered the ancestors. An old goddess grinds the bones of these ancestors like maize and places the flour like meal in a container. Quetzalcoatl performs a bloodletting ritual in which he drips the sacrificial blood onto the ground bones, giving him the potential for life. Wow, look at that. Listen to that story. Right? Doesn't sound pagan to me. Not one bit. Right? The present race of human beings is believed to be descended from those who were reborn from their deceased state. In the illustration in the Borgia Codex, Quetzalcoatl appears as the god of breath and air, Ecatl, and sits back to back with the god of death, right? Like God and the devil, right? It's so many different ways we could draw these connections, bro. There's no way that we could deny it at this point, right? This is our true ancestry, right? Not none of that pagan human sacrifice and stuff. Nah. I mean, it was going down, it's true, but we can't connect to that. That ain't us, right? That's not us. It has been suggested by some LDS scholars that this illustration represents the above story. The skeleton lives because it contains a living heart hanging from its rib cage. As noted previously, the maize god or first father gave his blood and thereby caused maize to be reborn from seed. Maize is intrinsically involved with man because the Maya believed man to be made of maize, right? Corn, maize, just like in the Bible. Just like with any origin story that has the belief in the Almighty Yah, right? As with the above story of Quetzalcoatl, fish were also associated with maize. For example, in the Popol Vuh, the hero twins' bones were grounded like maize, thrown into a river, and turned into fish, and eventually resurrected. Right, and then we gonna go into the tree and the resurrection, right? We got so much to talk about when we talking about the history of Mexico, bro. So much to talk about. I mean, like, this is the stuff that they left out. They left it out, right? And then they go and fabricate it and then create their own version of the story just so that they can consider themselves the originators. But We can't go with that no more. We are now learning that all of that stuff is false. None of it is true. None of it is true. We are now learning that none of it is true. Like the good brother said, right? We had a archaeologist born in the 1800s, right? The late 1800s, who coined the term Olmec in the late 1920s, right? Without no real information on who the true Olmeca people are. The Sokwe, the Zokwe. The Olmecs are invaders responsible for the decline of civilization. So when they say that they mysteriously disappeared, they off themselves, right? And the surviving civilizations just merged and moved on into newer societies, right? And picked up on other names that were given to them just like everything else. But the people, the true people of the Most High, they weren't into human sacrifice. That's not what we did. We didn't do none of that. We didn't play none of those games. Right? Our ancestors ain't played none of those games, man. But we gonna go into it, man. We understand that, like I said, majority of the tribes, or we even learning now, even some of the mound building civilizations were influenced by the civilizations in the South. And some of the civilizations in Central America were influenced by some of the mound building civilizations. Ancient America, the true old world. You don't know what you're dealing with when you come to the United States of America. Our history is so screwed up, or the Americas in general. The history here is so screwed up that you gotta go all the way back in time, probably like about 600,000 years, and rewrite the entire story yourself. That's how screwed up it is, man. But here we have it, man. The history of Mexico. We definitely gonna give this one a part 2. We learned so much just now. We even learned that even with the Aztecs, their supreme being wasn't even nothing similar to the Maize god, the creator god, right? They gave their tributes to the sun god, the god of war. Different. We gotta stop. Y'all gotta stop making that claim, man. Aztecs, Egyptians, blase, blase, blah. We gotta stop doing this, man. Because at the end of the day, even if they were copper colored, all skin ain't kin, man. All skin ain't kin. I appreciate y'all for tuning in. Bruce Lee, King Azakal. I appreciate y'all, man. We going live again tomorrow. Yeah, we coming back with another one, another banger tomorrow. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I know it be seeming like I be rambling sometimes. I get tongue tied too, right? I'm tired. I ain't gonna lie, y'all. But we gonna get it done regardless. Regardless. We gotta educate. We gotta inspire. Oh yeah, y'all. We got a coloring book coming out real soon, man. I'm gonna give a real announcement on that in the upcoming weeks. Got a coloring book coming out for the copper colored diaspora for adults and children, so we could familiarize ourselves with the true images that we supposed to connect to, not none of that Pan-African stuff, right? I appreciate you, bro. I appreciate you. That mean a lot. That means a lot to me, man. You'll understand that meant a lot. Word though, man. We back with another one, man. The history of Mexico. Like I said, we definitely gonna give this one a part 2. So make sure you tune in, tell a friend to tell a friend, share this video, like, comment, and subscribe. Follow on all social media, Copper Color King. Stay tuned for the next one, man. Let's get it.